All right, Marine. Today we're diving deep on something that's super important for every Marine.
MCDP 1.
That's right, MCDP 1, or Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 1. It's basically like the USMC's playbook for warfighting, their whole philosophy.
Yeah, you could say that. It's kind of like, think of it like it's your guide to how the Marine Corps thinks about approaches. Well, war. It's not just tactics, right?
Yeah.
It's about the mindset you need to be successful, to win, you know?
Absolutely. So we're going beyond just the facts here. We're going to unpack those core ideas that are emphasized, really hammered home in MCDP 1. First things first. What is war? I mean, according to this doctrine, what are we even talking about here?
Well, MCDP 1, it defines war as, well, a clash of wills. Each side is trying to get the other to do what they want, force their will on the other.
Okay.
It's a struggle for dominance. It's more than just battles or bombs. It's really fundamental.
So it's not like just shooting at each other till someone surrenders.
No.
There's more to it.
No. Way more. It's, think of it like, it's like a wrestling match, you know?
Okay.
It's that constant back and forth, push and pull between two thinking, well, opponents.
So you're always up against another mind, another set of plans.
Another will,
Yeah.
yeah, just as determined as yours.
And then MCDP 1 brings up this idea of friction. They call it, they describe it as what makes what makes it incredibly hard in war.
Yeah. Friction. It's like when everything that can go wrong does go wrong.
Oh, I know that feeling.
And in war, that happens a lot.
Right. So we're talking, what, weapons malfunction.
Yeah.
Bad weather popping up out of nowhere. Or even just, like, making a bad call when you're under pressure.
All that and more. Friction can be external, right, like the enemy, or the terrain, the environment. It throws you a curveball. But it can also be internal, like when your own plans, well, when they fall apart.
Right. In MCDP 1, they make it clear you can never totally get rid of friction.
It's impossible.
It's just part of war.
It's baked in.
So how do you even fight effectively? I mean, knowing that things are going to go sideways.
That's where all that training comes in, the preparation. MCDP 1 is really big on developing mental toughness, adaptability, being able to roll with the punches and still get the mission done. You got to find solutions even when it feels like the whole world is against you.
You got to be able to think on your feet.
Exactly.
And it's not just about reacting to the enemy. Is that MCDP 1 talks a lot about taking the initiative, dictating how the battle's going to go.
Right, which brings us to uncertainty. You never have the complete picture in war. MCDP 1 really stresses that.
It's like, what, fighting in a fog?
Yeah, like a dense fog. You can only see a few steps ahead.
But you're saying there's always incomplete information.
Yeah.
Which makes things, well, makes it hard to predict what'll happen.
Unpredictable.
Yeah.
And that's where things get really dangerous. Because a little thing, like a miscommunication or a lucky shot from the enemy,
It can have huge consequences.
huge ripple effects, like that butterfly effect, right?
One small thing can change everything.
Exactly. And MCDP 1 says, you got to be ready for that. Be able to change your plans on the fly. Because the situation's always evolving.
Makes sense. If you're stuck to your plan when everything's changing around you,
You're going to fail.
that's not good.
Not good at all.
So MCDP 1 is all about adapting to the situation, being flexible.
Right. Which leads us to another core idea, fluidity. War isn't static, it's a constant flow of events. Every situation is unique. So you can't just, you need a flexible approach.
So instead of trying to force your plan when things are always shifting,
Always shifting.
you got to go with the flow.
Exactly. Adapt and react. Sometimes you hit them hard and fast. Other times you got to pull back, regroup, figure out your next move.
So MCDP 1 is telling us you can't just react. You have to be proactive too. Shape the battle how you want it.
Right. That's the heart of maneuver warfare. We'll get into that more later.
Okay.
But the foundation is understanding that war, it's fluid, it's dynamic, it's always changing.
Okay, so we've got friction, uncertainty, and this fluidity. Put them all together, that sounds like a recipe for
chaos.
chaos.
Yeah. And MCDP 1 calls this disorder. They say disorder, it's the natural state of war. Plans fall apart, communications break down, mistakes, they happen. The unexpected, it becomes the norm. That's war.
But it's not just about dealing with this disorder, right?
Right.
MCDP 1, they actually say Marines should use it, like, to their advantage.
Yeah. Think about it. The enemy, they're trying to make sense of the chaos, too.
Oh, okay, I see.
And that's your opening. You exploit their confusion, you hit them when they least expect it, you disrupt their decision-making, make it harder for them to think straight.
So you're not overwhelmed by the chaos, you're turning it into a weapon.
Exactly.
That's pretty wild.
And MCDP1 points out the modern battlefield.
Yeah.
It's even more chaotic than ever. We've got all these advanced weapons now, front lines are blurry, information spreads so fast.
It's a whole different ballgame.
It's way more complex, way more unpredictable.
So being able to operate in all this chaos, it's, well, pretty important.
It's more important than ever, and that's where complexity comes in. MCDP1 makes it clear, war isn't some simple equation. It's a complex system, tons of moving parts, individuals, units, different parts of the military.
All interacting.
All interacting, yeah, and making decisions with, well, incomplete information. That's messy.
So it's like a big web,
No,
right?
no.
And every little thing you do.
It has ripple effects. You can't always predict what will happen.
Wow.
That's why they talk about decentralized command. You can't have one person micromanaging everything. Not in a complex operation. It won't work.
So instead of relying on one leader to make all the calls.
You empower Marines at all levels. Let them think for themselves. Adapt to the situation as it unfolds. Take initiative.
So basically, MCDP1 is saying that in this whole mess and all this chaos and complexity of war, it's the human element that really matters.
Absolutely. The human dimension of war. That's one of the most important parts of MCDP1. Really drives it home. MCDP1, it really emphasizes that war, it's not some abstract thing, you know. It's a human experience, deeply human. It's shaped by emotions, by courage, by fear, camaraderie, responsibility. All that stuff matters.
So you're saying there's more to war than just the tactics and the technology.
Way more. It's the psychological stuff, the moral aspects. That's just as important, if not more important than the physical stuff, really.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, think about fear. It's natural, right?
Yeah.
To be afraid when you're in danger.
Yeah, I think so.
And in war, well, danger's everywhere. MCDP1, it doesn't pretend that Marines aren't going to be afraid. It acknowledges that fear is part of it. Every Marine is going to feel it at some point.
So it's not about, like, being some fearless supermarine. It's about dealing with that fear.
Exactly. MCDP1 makes a really important distinction. Fear, it's natural, but courage. Courage is overcoming that fear. It's that mental and moral strength to push through it, to do what needs to be done, even when it's terrifying.
And that's where good leadership comes in, right?
Absolutely.
To help Marines deal with that fear and still perform their best when things are really tough.
MCDP1 really stresses that. Good leadership. It's critical to how Marines deal with the stress of combat. It's about building trust within the unit, that feeling that you're all in it together, giving them confidence, inspiring them to be courageous, even when the odds are stacked against them.
So it's more than just barking orders. It's about creating the right environment where Marines feel supported, motivated, empowered to do their jobs.
Exactly. It's about discipline, resilience, respect for each other.
Okay, now MCDP1 also talks a lot about initiative. It seems like it's connected to this leadership thing, empowering Marines to take charge.
It's all connected. Initiative, it's that willingness to act without being told. See an opportunity, you take it. You own the mission. You find solutions to the unexpected.
You're proactive, not reactive.
Right. And they make it clear, this initiative thing, it's essential at every level, from the individual Marine all the way up to the battalion commander. Everyone has a role.
So even if you're not the one calling the shots, you still got to, think for yourself, anticipate problems, and take action when you need to.
Absolutely. MCDP1 is saying every Marine is a leader, in a way, no matter what their rank is.
This initiative thing, it seems even more important when you think about how chaotic war is, like we talked about earlier with all that unpredictability.
Yeah, when things are changing fast, you can't wait for orders from the top. You need Marines who can think on their feet, adapt, make decisions in the moment.
Be comfortable with a certain amount of autonomy.
Yeah.
Making good judgments even when you don't have all the information.
That's it. And that's why training is so important. You can't just read about this stuff. You got to practice it. Get into situations where you're challenged, forced to think critically under pressure.
So it's not just about knowing the steps. It's about developing a certain way of thinking.
MCDP1 is trying to instill a mindset, a way to approach war that's more than just following orders.
It's about owning your role, being responsible for the mission.
And having confidence in your ability to adapt, to overcome anything that gets thrown at you.
This ties back to what we were saying about war being a human thing, right?
Absolutely.
It's about people, their courage, their willpower, their ability to work together.
That's it. And that brings us to another key part, of MCDP1, how physical, moral, and mental forces all play together in war. They're all connected.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the connection?
Okay, so think of it like this. Physical forces, those are the tangible things, like how many troops you got, what kind of weapons, the terrain.
The stuff you can see and touch.
Right.
Moral forces, though, that's the intangible stuff. Morale, discipline, unit cohesion, the will to fight.
The stuff in here. Tap's head.
Exactly. And then you've got mental forces. That's the intellectual side, the thinking part of war. Strategy, planning, decision-making, outsmarting your opponent.
So it's not just about who's got the bigger guns or more guys.
Nope. It's about who's got the stronger will, the better leaders, the smarter strategy. MCDP1 is really clear about that. If you ignore the moral and mental parts of war, you're going to have a bad time, even if you have a ton of firepower.
Like you could have all the tanks and planes in the world, but if your troops aren't motivated...
Or if their leadership's weak.
If they don't believe in what they're fighting for.
They're going to crumble.
Yeah.
MCDP1 is telling us that the human element is what decides who wins and loses.
It's the deciding factor.
You can have the best tech, but if your troops aren't motivated, if they're not disciplined, if their leadership's bad, you're not going to win.
So it's really important to cultivate those things, like courage, discipline, that unit cohesion. Absolutely. And MCDP1, it also emphasizes that war. It's not a static thing. It changes, it evolves all the time.
Always changing.
Yeah. The way we fight wars is always changing because of technology, new strategies, politics.
So what worked in the past might not work now.
Exactly. So you have to constantly adapt, change your approach. That's where innovation comes in. MCDP1 is big on that. Marines always need to be learning, trying new things, questioning the old ways of doing things. You got to stay ahead of the curve.
So it's not enough to just be good at what you do. You got to be pushing the boundaries, always looking for a better way to fight and win.
Right. And they want Marines to take ownership of that, to be proactive about finding new ideas, new solutions, always looking for an edge.
So war, it's like a mix of science, AD art, right?
Yeah. MCDP1 says there's a science to it, the ballistics, logistics, all that technical stuff. That can be studied, measured.
But there's more to it than that, right? You can't just plug it into a formula.
Right. It's not that simple. There's always that human element. Creativity, intuition, judgment.
So you got to have both, the science and the art. The knowledge to understand the tools and the sense to use them effectively in real-world situations. When things are messy.
You got it. MCDP1 says Marines need to develop both those technical skills and those conceptual skills, the thinking part.
So it's not just about being a good shot or a good pilot or whatever your specialty is.
Right.
You also got to be able to think critically, adapt to new situations, and make good decisions when things are going crazy.
Exactly. And that's why professional military education is so important. It's about developing that mental agility, the conceptual framework that allows you to operate effectively in a complex, ever-changing environment. War is a thinking man's game.
This is a lot to take in. MCDP1 is setting a pretty high standard for Marines.
It is demanding,
right,
but it's also empowering. MCDP1 is telling Marines, hey, you have the potential to be so much more than just a cog in the machine. You can be leaders, thinkers, problem solvers, innovators. You can shape the battle, determine the outcome. It's up to you.
You're in control.
Right. It's about taking ownership no matter what your role is. And MCDP1, it gives you the framework, the tools, the concepts to do that, to make a real difference.
We've talked about a lot, but there's one big piece of MCDP1 that we haven't really dug into yet. Maneuver warfare. No. That seems to connect a lot of the ideas we've talked about, initiative, fluidity, disrupting the enemy's thinking.
Yeah, maneuver warfare, that's a cornerstone of how the Marine Corps fights. It's a whole topic on its own. Really deserves a deep dive all by itself. All right, so maneuver warfare. MCDP1, it describes it as a war-fighting philosophy.
Okay.
That seeks to, shatter the enemy's cohesion.
Shatter their cohesion.
Break them apart, basically.
Yeah. Through
a bunch of rapid, focused, unexpected actions. Keep them off balance.
So it's not just about moving units around on a map. It's about causing chaos, confusing the enemy so they can't think straight or fight effectively.
Exactly. Maneuver warfare. It's about bypassing their strengths, finding their weaknesses, and then, bam, you hit them hard. Dictate how the fight's going to go. It's about attacking them where they're vulnerable, not just physically, but mentally, too. Get in their heads.
This sounds like it takes a lot of flexibility, adaptability, especially when things are unpredictable, like we were talking about earlier.
Oh, yeah. Maneuver warfare, it's all about speed, agility, making decisions in the moment. You got to be one step ahead, always anticipating what the enemy's going to do, and then react faster than they can. Stay ahead of the game.
So you're not locked into a plan. You got to adjust on the fly.
You got it.
Yeah.
Maneuver warfare, it's all about using the fluidity of the battlefield to your advantage. Embrace the chaos.
Now, this is all connecting back to what we were talking about with friction and uncertainty, right?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like maneuver warfare, it's almost a way to crank those things up for the enemy, make it even harder for them to operate.
Exactly. If you can create a tempo, a speed of operations they can't keep up with, well, you overload their decision-making process. They start making mistakes. They're reacting to you. You're not reacting to them.
So the goal isn't just winning battles. It's breaking their will to fight, making them doubt they can win, making them, well, give up.
That's a big part of it. Maneuver warfare, it's about achieving decisive victory, not just by racking up casualties, but by shattering their cohesion, making them believe they can't succeed.
Okay, so MCDP-1 talks about physical maneuver, any mental maneuver. What's the difference?
Good question. So physical maneuver, that's the more traditional stuff, moving your forces around to outmaneuver the enemy, flank them, attack from unexpected directions, disrupt their formations, the classic stuff.
So it's about creating a physical advantage by how you move and position your forces.
Right. But mental maneuver, that's more about, attacking their minds, their decision-making, their morale. It's using deception, psyops, surprise to make them uncertain, make them afraid, make them doubt themselves.
So you might not even be physically outmaneuvering them, but you're still messing with their heads, shaking their confidence, making it harder for them to think straight.
Exactly. And a lot of times, the most effective maneuver warfare, it combines both the physical and the mental. You hit them from all sides.
Can you give me an example, like how this would actually work in a real fight?
Sure. Imagine you're facing a bigger enemy force and they're dug in defensively.
Okay.
Now, if you attack them head on, it's going to be costly, could be a disaster. But with maneuver warfare, you might launch a fake attack, a feint, to draw their attention one way.
Okay, distract them.
And while they're focused on that, you send a smaller, faster force around to hit them somewhere else, where they're weak.
Hit them where it hurts.
Exactly. You use surprise, you use speed, you create confusion, and disrupt their ability to respond. Their command and control starts to break down. Now they're vulnerable.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah.
But it sounds like maneuver warfare, it requires a lot of trust in your Marines, doesn't it? Giving them the freedom to make decisions, to adapt to the situation.
Absolutely. It needs a decentralized command structure. Initiative is key. Independent action. You got to encourage that, not hold it back.
I can see how this could be, well, kind of risky.
There's always risk in war. But MCDP-1 argues that the potential rewards of maneuver warfare, they're worth it. Especially in the modern battlefield where speed, agility, adaptability, they're more important than ever. You got to be able to move and think faster than the enemy.
So it seems like what MCDP-1 is really saying is it wants Marines at all levels to be thinkers, problem solvers, decision makers, not just following orders blindly.
You got it. MCDP-1 is about cultivating a certain mindset, one that embraces chaos and complexity, that looks for opportunities, and that's always trying to outmaneuver the enemy. Physically and mentally.
So it's not just about tactics or techniques. It's a way of thinking, a philosophy for fighting, and it guides how the entire Marine Corps approaches war.
Exactly. And it's a philosophy that's been proven effective time and time again throughout the Marine Corps history.
All right, Marine. We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
I think we've given you a good overview of MCDP-1, those key principles that shape how the Marines fight. We talked about the nature of war, the challenges you'll face, friction, uncertainty, all that, and how important the human element is. And, of course, this whole idea of maneuver warfare.
And remember, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
MCDP-1, it's not just a book to read and put away. It's something you study, you debate, you apply in the real world. So take what you've learned here, dive deeper into that text, talk it over with your fellow Marines, and never stop thinking critically about war, about how to win.
Because at the end of the day, the strongest weapon you have is right here. Tap's head, your mind. It's your ability to think, to adapt, to overcome any challenge. That's what's going to make the difference out there. So keep learning, keep training, and never stop pushing yourself to be the best Marine you can be. Semper Fi.